Yeah. All right. Thank you for joining me for restorative today. So I want you to start with your bolster supported on a blanket roll and possibly the blanket on top, or if you prefer to have two blankets stacked underneath the bolster, that sometimes some people prefer that. So you might, play with this version, and then during the session, if you decide to change it up, you're welcome to let the bolster be elevated as much as comfortable. So even if you put like a block underneath the bolster, you can kind of play with how it would feel supportive. So we'll sit in front of the bolster and we'll take a couple blocks under the thighs, have the blocks at the second setting. So you have almost too much support at first. And that's a nice way to use the restorative practices sometimes to have extra support, and then you can take away some of the supports and see how your body finds the balance, right? To become a little bit more advanced. So the feet are together, and we'll take a belt that's in a loop, and I want you to make sure that that belt kind of sags down on the body, so it's not. You know what, the bolster right that spot is where you might want to just put your belt. A revelation for me today. Where does the belt go? Well, maybe that's where it goes. So it's not on your bolster, but it's next to it. So I'm going to pull the belt so as it goes over my head and around right where the bolster hits the back, or doesn't hit the back, but touches. You're going to slide so the buckle is in easy reach. And again, you want to find that when you lower back, your sandbag is nearby, that this is a pretty relaxed Baddha Konasana. I'm going to try to angle the block so I want you to try to find a way to angle the block so the thighs, it's almost like it makes the thighs a little bit more bulky, right? So the circulation in the connective tissue, you can start to loosen that up, the fabric of it, because that's kind of what it is, the fabric over your muscles. And when you lower back, have the stand nearby, but let's refrain from using it at first. We're going to move the elbows wide, take a deep breath, feel the ribs, relax your face, kind of feeling the things you operate through with aligning your breath, and then reach the hands to your elbows, whichever arm is closer to your forehead, it doesn't really matter right now, but when you hold onto your elbows, noticing where it's comfortable, which might be forward of your nose or up towards your forehead. And then feel if you can move your elbows out a little wider, which may mean your hands slide onto the forearms. Okay, like you're trying to push the elbows towards the back of the space. Now this is interesting work. And then when we move the elbows back, the arms might touch your forehead a bit here. But feel when you reach back, can you slide the hold of the forearms or elbows over your head and feel the elbows. And if it hurts too much on one of the crossings, you can switch the crossing and feel, is there a preferred arm crossing? Take the preferred one for right now. If one part like the bicep tendon or just any area in the top part of the arm to the back feels grippy, rotator cuff, you could make less of a deal of how far your arms go back, but take a moment where you're feeling the movement of the ribs via the breath function. Today's like we're working with our instruction manual for our breathing a bit. Okay, so feel when the elbows are a little bit out. They don't have to go all the way back to touch your bolster, but they might. Okay, now you're going to relax the grip of the hands to the elbows and lower the arms, get a hold of your sand. And I would be real casual how you kind of drag it up across the body. You don't have to sit up and tighten things, but you might get a nice grip of it using maybe both hands to help yourself to some sand, and cross it on the rib intersection, way below the sternum. And this placement of the sand is likely going to feel like this circulation that you're working with holding your elbows or forearms. You can come back to that, maybe switch the crossing unless that crossing is painful, right? Avoid painful crossings. Okay. But when you feel that motion of the arms connected and the breath, and it might be easier, it might be a light amount of challenge, but feel how the direction of the arms is in motion, and then slide away the hold of the arms completely and let the elbows flow out to the side and the hands on the floor, palms relaxed. I think most of us will have palms open-ish, even if the fingers curl in. Or maybe you might need to slide your arms a little bit down so they're at the lower than the level of the heart. And let's land here with about 4 to 5 cycles of breath. Adjust the sand if it's sliding, because breathing could affect the placement. It's nice to have the sandbag in a spot where you can kind of feel awareness of the ribs, right? Whether you think of it as the ribs or many ribs, kind of multiple patterns of movement. I think they kind of work in tandem though. It's not as if you're going to notice, rib 6 and 8 or anything, but you'll notice they kind of work in symphony with each other. It's quite lovely. So let's take a few more moments with breath. Opening the heart, stretching the chest, supporting the spine. Now finally, when you slide the arms close by the sides of the mat, feel if the shoulders can evenly center back, right? Without trying to move your brain up or lift your brain off of the blanket. See if you can let the shoulders simply center, like you're trying to get the blades to squeeze in towards the bolster. They're inside the line of the bolster, but you're working on that response of the chest. Slide the sand away. And as you unbuckle, you're going to bring the knees to each other. Right? So that seems rather obvious. I would lift up the knees and slide the feet apart, let the knees rest towards each other. The blocks could be nearby. They don't have to be pushed aside that much, but feel when the knees, the feet, when they move apart, there's only so far you can stretch the feet out where your knees could touch. So there are days I find, and I don't do this every day, this shape, but like this is challenging. I haven't done this for a very long time, this shape. So I can tell that the response in my quads is a little gripped up and almost a little shaky. So again, this is how wide my feet are. So if I scoot my feet in, turn the toes in, easy, toes turning in. If my feet are parallel, it's a little more challenging. So kind of play with toes in, feet parallel, kind of back and forth, and then feel if you can work with that relationship of the knees touching and gradually slide the feet so they're parallel. Right, the inner leg might go yowza, right? It might be one side of the leg that has a little more tension. Okay, now getting your ball. If your legs need to shift around so you can go find that next prop, that's okay. But help yourself to another prop, okay? And then as the knees separate, can you place the ball, see if you can just reach that down towards the knees. Because the knees aren't going to reach for the ball, I don't think. Unless you have a new habit forming of getting your knees to hold things. But you're going to make sure it's a very small, hold with the ball, right? So it's not up on the inner thigh, it's certainly at the knees. And I'm going to try to push into that ball. You might lose it. It might just drop out. It's pretty easy to have that will happen. But when you push in, feel the circulation kind of busy up here in the legs, busy up leg. You know, when you're pushing in, yeah, the legs will fire up. The back, hopefully it's not firing up. You're trying to use the props underneath your body to support that whole line of the spine. Relax the grip. Hopefully you were pushing into the ball. And then we're going to take the ball to the outside of the left thigh. You've been here before in this. You've taken this journey with the shape. Slide the feet in towards the seat. And then take care how you move the right ankle to the left knee. So for me, for whatever reason, I'm going to scoot my rear a little bit lower so I can easily cross the ankle to the knee. So you might find some of these things are tricky. Some days you might feel a little stiff in the back or the parts of the legs. So I hook that foot to that left knee and then lean the legs to the left. Hold on to the right knee. And then when you hold that knee, you're going to guide the legs, both moving the right knee towards you a little bit when you hold on to it. But then intention is to go left, right? Of course, my right sitting bone is just starting to peel a little bit up off the ground, so I'm not anchored into that sitting bone like the other one. Okay, or anchoring into that part of the pelvis the same way because I'm stretching it. So let the right arm be either relaxed or back besides your head. Yeah, and just enjoy how the circulation is featured through that right hip. The side of the left foot should be kind of resting. So if you're on the bottom of the left foot, that might cause a little challenge. So see if you can be a little more passive on the left ankle. So you just kind of roll to the side of the foot. And there's several different points of reference for this one, right? To remind yourself that to not take it too seriously in all of the parts, right? The left foot can be passive. The waist can lengthen whether your arm is back or not. So even if my arm is down by my side, I have to work a little more to have that movement of the ribs. Rest in your head, breathing. It's a restorative session. And if by chance you feel the need to create a little more circulation in that right hip, you use the hand and find that there's kind of a determination. You hold on to the knee and you're guiding that leg in direction to bring more circulation, optimal circulation into the hip. Okay, so let's time it the same on the second side. So I would encourage you to let go of the knee. And then when you center the leg parts back in, change the crossing. Yeah, sometimes it's tempting to just leave the ball where it is right there and then feel when you cross so that left ankle's to the right knee. Yeah, sometimes that feels helpful to have, but we need to push it over to the other upper outer right leg. There's only one right side, but to the other side, lean to the right side. Yeah, do you feel like there's any circulation difference when you don't hold the knee, right? I find that I generally get a little more out of holding onto the knee than if I was just letting the legs kind of swish over to the right. But some people might feel like they have enough without holding the knee. And if you need to wad up your blanket under your head, remember that's kind of the reason I like to have the blanket on top, besides instead of below the bolster. But I don't want you to do so much neck lift that you're rounding. creating a lot of flexion in the cervical vertebrae. So have a little bit of caution how much you do roll it up, but if it feels like your neck is getting tighter, use more blanket. But remember, if you make more blanket height, it stretches the neck more in that forward rounded position. So when you're holding onto that left knee, notice this side. I mean, if you were to go back and forth side to side and feel how much you use your bicep on the second side compared to the first, there's probably some habits that you form that makes it more relatable for you, easier on one side. So let the left arm stretch back for some of us arm is down, and feel the weight of the body back on the props. Side of the right foot, you might be kind of shifting that right foot, sliding it down or pulling it back a little higher. And that will really affect the circulation. So if I let the foot kind of slide down, right, I kind of lose the alignment, the architecture, it kind of falls away here, doesn't it? So I've got to have the right foot close enough, but not so close that it hurts a knee. And as you reach with that waist, whether the arm is back or it's beside you, feel that breath creates that spaciousness inside. So there's a reach internally with each breath. A constant process. Okay, now as we start to loosen up the grip with the right hand, we're going to shift back in towards the center line, uncross, and place the ball between the knees. And feel if you can let the spine have its natural, shift back onto the props. Notice that. And slide the feet a little bit forward so that you'll have an easier balance, right, to come up to sitting. So yeah, I don't know if holding your leg, your pants is going to help you get upwards, but you could try. So reach the arms back overhead. I don't think I've really given that one a try before. And inhale, ribs expand. I know, try to get it from the navel up to have expansion. I know this is almost as if you anticipate trying to sit up, so the lower body kind of tightens. So just work with it. It's really a work in progress, isn't it? It's a process too. So when I lift, you don't have to focus too much on the breath here, but you are breathing. So come up and feel how far forward the feet need to go so you can actually anticipate landing on the sitting bones. Lean back, do not lower all the way on your bolster though. So lean back, and then using the leg circulation to squeeze into the ball, and then relax the grip. Okay, so let's take a few times where we squeeze and release, and squeeze, release. Now you can pace it so that when you're pushing into the ball, you want to find that each side has an even intensity. So that might take you a little time. Once you start to get tired, one side will let you know probably more than the other. And you'll learn, maybe that's a weaker side. This is an interesting exercise for that. Also, the lungs will get a little tired from this hold. Okay. So now when you come back to recognize sitting upright, okay, take the ball aside over to the left, and we're going to roll to the left hip. We're not doing a big roll, but we're shifting to the left hip. We're going to pull the bolster and blankets back. And then if you can put the bolster so it's horizontal, it's right across the mat, and then your blanket stack. So the one that's rolled, you're going to take it into a bit of a bulkier fold. Yeah, and I like to kind of keep it a certain, whatever might seem like a proper blanket fold, but it's okay if your blankets are wadded up a bit. So if that just happens, it's fine. It's probably something I take too seriously, the blanket pull thing. Okay, block at the back if you're going to use that reach. If you know you don't put your arm overhead for side sage, don't bother with the block. Okay, sand, easy reach should be next to your left knee. And then as I start to move, actually I'm putting mine on the bolster, make it easier. Place the ball on the inside of that right leg. Maybe give it a try, even if it seems too easy for you. You might as well start with comfort. And then when you're leaning, yeah, this is interesting. I try to get the side length of my ribs to reach. Now that's tricky because I've got an elbow down, so I can't quite stretch my arm into the ceiling and lie over the bolster. So when I lie into it, I'm trying to use the bolster to kind of smooth out my ribs. And then when you add that sand to that side, it could be down onto the hip, it could be across. To me, this never fails to stay. It doesn't fall off when it's horizontal. And, or some of you like to have your sand higher, I think. So when you lower down onto that side, take your time, right? There's no rush, and you're in your own little space to focus in, which is nice. So when you feel that the side is starting to center, which is kind of a funny idea, right? You don't usually center on your side, but you can recognize where the right arm is going to find its place, whether it's on your side, next to the bolster, on top of it. Yeah, this is one where you can kind of explore. So for me, the arm overhead works okay, but I need to find where to put the block. So it's not straight over my head. That just is a little too sharp for the shoulder. So you can find, okay, maybe it's zigzag, but your side of your brain is on the blanket. Unless you're used to rolling to the back of your head, your left foot could help move the ball around if you're not quite content with how it is. And then steady the focus into that side stretch. Relaxing the weight of your head. Receiving this increased circulation without having to really struggle much. And take a few more moments here where you're massaging into that left side of the torso. So the body weight and the movement of breath creates that massage. So it's sort of like when we do things with the massage ball, kind of rolling it underneath like the glutes. It's the same thing. We're doing body weight, but then movement of the breath. And that's what creates that massage into that left side of the torso. So now continuation of mid-body focus, which really helps us get a little bit more of a lift at the heart anyhow. So when I slide the sand away, I'm gonna see if I can casually move my knees towards both of them now to the left. And then when I push down to my right hand and then lift, slide the left hand in. Simple. Some of this is just learning some self-care techniques for creating mobility. I'm going to turn so I face again away from the bolster. And when I lower back onto the bolster, I want to have you take a block. You can leave the one overhead if you have that. Take a block under the pelvis that it's flat. Okay. Next to the bolster, it's probably right adjacent to it. It's not too much down towards the the feet, right? It's under the pelvis. Lower back onto the blanket. Now that block's closer than I thought. Open the chest and let the feet, kind of squiggle them a little bit out to the side. And as far as you know, they're parallel, huh? But feeling the feet, like stretching the toes a little bit, press down through the balls of the feet, opening the chest. Okay, and then resting the feet and maybe the knees together. And this is, again, you can focus on maybe pushing the feet a little farther apart. You might find you can do this one easily when you have more height under the pelvis than the last time we did it, when we have our hips on the ground. So this I find interesting for the circulation in the legs. It's all pretty simple stuff, right? It's just about helping yourself to props. Okay, shoulders back, chest is open. Okay, now if you feel like there's little segments of the back that aren't quite cooperating with centering, let your eyes close and just feel the breath. Maybe it's kind of held in the front of the body when you breathe, but giving yourself time to feel the body weight on the props helps the breath kind of seep out a little bit more into the ribs. Yeah, so if you're trying to challenge yourself, maybe your feet are as parallel as you can make them, right? The toes aren't turning in quite so much. Unless that feels better for you, then you do it. Okay, last few moments, if your breath confused, I understand you're getting a feeling of this whole centerpiece of the chest, the xiphoid, this area right here. You want to work with feeling what's below that is reacting to the inhale, softening, and then centering. That centering might be a tough one, just to feel softening and then letting it rest back. Right, strengthening the breathing muscles, which requires focus. This kind of focus, right, is strengthening. Also movement is strengthening. So both of those activities are equally, and they're different too. You know, taking a walk feels different than this. Okay, now when you shift your knees apart and scoot the feet back in towards center, take the right leg, move it in towards the chest. And if this is comfortable for your balance, not all of us are going to find our back will respond with agreement, but you'll move your left knee in as well and you'll bring your feet straight up. The block is helpful to create this inversion, but for some it's a lot of work for their breathing muscles. They just feel kind of overwhelmed. So if you're in overwhelm, then I want you to bring the right foot back down, the left knee in, and take a few moments here working with kind of an alternating reclining march, right? So you can do this alternating marching shape and feel the circulation in the core band, or you can have both legs up. This doesn't work for everybody, so just know if it's not working for you, it's many people will find it's a lot of intensity, and other parts of their circulation work better. Okay. It's good to try this legs up version 2 different ways in one session, so you can feel how your pelvis supports the lift. If you're kind of fighting this, but you want to have the legs up to just try it, you can always let the feet separate a bit, bend the knees, and just see how that feels in the back. The back ribs touch into the bolster, assuming. And then as you bend the knees a little more, lower down 1 foot at a time. For those of us with alternating march, come down with both feet now. And then we're going to just let the knees switch to the right, and we'll roll to the right and push the block to the side, and then take side sage on the right hip. So when I lean to the right side, I like to use the ball on the inside of the leg that's stretching back. And then adding, and if your bolster's kind of just shifting around quite a bit, maintain bolster alignment. don't let it turn too much. Okay, so require yourself some focus with the props, attending to them, prop attended. And with that sandbag across the hip or through the ribs, and then let the left arm reach over, or it's down by the side. All right, so the second side, you might have to figure out where in the world is that block? And where should it be? So this side might feel different in your shoulder. Yeah, differences happen in one body. There's the right side and the left side. And they're different. Okay, so feeling what is similar maybe in the ribs. And again, it's not about trying to pull the breathing in and tighten it up. It's about actually the opposite here. But you'll naturally have a nice amount of elongation through these tissues, through the skin, kind of moving it around. It's, it's pretty flexible. That's that skin right on top of the muscles, the connective tissue, the layer is pretty flexible. In fact, generally, right, but for some of us, as we mature, it doesn't become flexible this way. So we're trying to work on mobility with the breath. Let the weight of your head rest. See what happens when you let your head relax. Now weight into your right side. Kind of feel if the ribs flare a little bit left. Okay, so when we start to shift now, this time purposely towards all fours, you're going to slide the sand away, and off of the mat goes the sand. And as you lean to that left knee towards the right knee, you're going to roll the body weight into that hip. And then when you come around to the hands on the bolster, shift, and let's take the bolster. Actually, first things first, take a blanket. You're going to move it back towards the wall and then get both of your blocks. Okay, so they're side of the mat. And that other blanket, let's just leave it there because I think we might enjoy having it for a thing or two. Okay, so the blanket's going to go under the knees. So I usually just put it kind of on me like I'm going to pull it up to my thigh, and then I slide it down under the knees. It's usually the right alignment for me, but maybe not for everybody. Okay, turn the bolster lengthwise. Okay, and then hands on the sides on the floor, and take the feet so they push a little bit into the wall. So if you're not quite at the wall space, this is a good time to get there if you need to rearrange your props. So that we'll be using most everything. I think the only prop we might not be using at the wall maybe is the belt. But the knees have that separation, and kind of being polite to them, you might find if you push into the wall, it either takes the knees to more pressure or it does the opposite. So you've got to be a little cautious here, how much force you move through. So when you round your back into cat, shin towards the chest, you can feel how the feet push, and this makes a really nice cat pose. I'll have to let my cats know. Inhale, arching. I don't think they would need that wall. Exhale, rounding. Chin towards the chest. Okay, so if I look back, my feet basically are doing a little bit of a foot stand, right? They're straight. Ball of the foot is at the base, stretching my toes. but the foot is stretching a little bit. Yeah, make sure they're in pretty good alignment. You can feel a little bit more of that flexibility of the spine when you push into the wall. It's a good way to do cat-cow, so alternating arching and flexing of your spine. The movement of the hips. Okay, now next time you come back towards center, let's move the feet to push and lift the knees up and reach the heels up at the wall. So you have the heels lifted into an inverted V pose. Hands push the floor away. And as you're in this inversion, feel where the circulation is in the legs, right? And when my heels are up, I find it slightly challenging. So if I lower my heels towards the base, it might just be too much generally. So be realistic, right? The heels lifting creates more inversion, so that's nice. You don't have to walk your feet up the wall though. Okay, feel the hands press the floor away. Okay, all that blood flow in the back. Okay, so lower the knees and then lower onto the bolster. All that circulation in the back. So I'm going to stretch my blocks, or my arms, not my blocks. They don't need to stretch. But the hands on the blocks forward, pushing the feet into the wall so my knees lift, right? And so I'm sure you've done this kind of yoga pose before without props. Well, you try to, and it's hard. So when I lift up my head, I've got the bolster holding up my rib space, my whole core land. Breathing. Okay, so with all that effort, you're going to lower down, pile your hands up on top of each other, bring your forehead to your hands, relax the buttocks, let the feet just have a little push at the wall. If that feels too pushy, you can let the feet kind of lift up at the wall as well. Okay. Purpose here is relaxing the shoulders. Breathing. Okay, one more time. Hands forward on the blocks. This is too far forward, bring the blocks closer in. If that's too much, elbows on the blanket and lift up. Okay, so very, lots of options. Okay, when I push into the blocks, I'm trying to lift up my face, right? So there's a little work into my side, upper side waist, right into the armpit chest. So I'm pressing. Okay, so get a feeling of that length here. This is really important. Let the feet push into the wall so the knees are up. I'm sure your legs are cooperating, right, with that momentum of pushing. Everything's kind of pushing now, huh? Even the front of the hips are pushing downwards. Okay, now shift the knees down, slide the blocks or put them to the sides of the mat, maybe a little closer in, so if you take a lunge, you can hold on to them. You're gonna lift up chest, so you're an upward dog. And then when you come back to table, feel the spine round into cat, feet push the wall, and then natural arch of the spine. Okay, so let's put the bolster to the side. You might be using it for pigeon pose coming up to keep it so it's in easy reach. So knees together, and let's step the right foot forward, take the blocks inside the sides of the mat, and take a low lunge. So the left knee is on that blanket and you lean the right thigh forward. So using that movement of the right leg should give a nice stretch to the front of the back thigh. The blocks could feel too low. I mean, for me, probably a little higher is better because that might work better for a short frame, and maybe a longer frame, it works better to have the blocks low. But feel for yourself how your spine has its natural curves here. This is a great natural curve pose. Okay, so feeling when you're pressing, you're feeling into that lunge. Breathe. It only helps And now when you feel that movement of the back thigh stretching, see if you can push a little bit into the left foot, lift the knee, and then take the blocks a little farther forward. I keep thinking I'm stretching my blocks, but I know they don't stretch. Stretch the left heel down towards the base of the wall or maybe towards the floor. That ain't happening for my heel today, but it's lowering a little bit. Okay, the right leg can start to straighten. You might start to go back with the leg lengthening out, and then really feel that purposeful sensation here in the hip, the right hip. If my right foot is pressing, and whether my knee bends a bit or it doesn't, I'm still giving a little more weight bearing into this right leg and the hip. Okay, right foot is parallel, perhaps parallel. Okay, now reach the chest first, forward, like just kind of navigate your way in your body. So chest first, bend right knee, step left foot to right foot. You decide if you're going to take a forward bend that requires flexing, which would be I let my chest lower to my legs and hug the back of them or hold my elbows. Or you're going to do more spine extension, which is blocks forward, bend the knees a bit and feel more reach. Right, this is reasonable for a little more beneficial for the spine, I would say. Probably a reasonable direction is this, although we have a habit of doing this and feeling like this is better, but then see what happens to the vertebrae. So if you can do a little of this, and if you like that kind of tossing over your head, letting that drain out for a few moments, that's okay, but not a whole lot of that at this point in life. Okay, it's just not a great message to the vertebrae, although sometimes it feels good. Okay, now if you need to take that dangling pose, take that now. If you're going to hold your elbows and release your head down, it's up to you. To each his own. Okay, now feel how the leg parts. Even if you're here, you might feel the feet are too close. Okay, if I'm here forward on the blocks, I'm okay with the feet this close. This doesn't bother me. I'm not losing balance. Okay, so when you feel the knees bending, you're going to get your blocks, move them back, or if they're already there, take that right foot back, take a reach that you might even kind of play with it, like rewind it. Feel it reach even to the wall. Use that position to strengthen your left hip. Bend the knee and reach the heel back. You know there's a wall there. Hopefully it's stable and it should hold your foot. Okay. Hopefully your foot doesn't go through it. Jeez. So when you lean into it this way, we're going backwards on this side. So since we're already lifted with our back knee. So you can stretch the right heel towards the floor. I like it to be a little bit up at the wall. And work with that left knee in its bend and its straightening efforts. So you feel a little cattywampus on here. This is not a completely balanced feeling in your pelvis. So it should feel like it's more left side of the pelvis that's circulating. And the right calf. Now the wall will keep you in line with your right heel. So you won't swerve it too much left. You're trying to keep it either a little bit up or all the way down. Now press down through the ball of that left foot. Feel the ball of the foot. If you're starting to kind of slouch in your foot, really press into the base of the big toe. That's a reminder in quite a bit of yoga techniques is the base of the big toe for standing poses. It's a tricky spot, isn't it? Base of the big toe. Because you can feel that stretch towards the heel. All right, bend through the left knee, lower the back knee to the blanket. Stay with that low lunge. So feel the front of that right thigh stretching. Okay. So we're going to go through the pigeon poses side by side rather than having too much in between them. And it's sometimes nice to have a wall behind you, but you don't want it too close to you either. So when you feel that right thigh stretching, the back leg, the front of the back, okay? Notice when you do the movement of the chest a little bit forward or just even up, breathing. Give it a try or breathe. You know, when you do tilt to lower your head down, you're going to shift your blocks. This is where you might use your bolster. Okay, so I think I like bolster for pigeon, but just a little easier on my back muscles. I feel a little more balanced. Some of us really love pigeon without anything underneath. So you can choose. You can have the bolster here, or you can decide to start without it and see what happens. But you'll use the position of the left foot to go toes in, heel, toe, heel, toe, heel. So the foot's turning in and out, in and out. Then it goes to the right. And then you're gonna lean forward to that left leg, whether your right leg is on the bolster or not. See how the wall can be nice because you can push a little bit into it. You don't want to be too close. So go forward onto the blanket. And this blanket is coming in a little bit more helpful than I thought. Okay, so elbows down. Again, if you don't have the bolster, it might be too much for some people on the knee. It might feel better for some people, deeper stretch. So you decide, but when you're leaning down, use this as a focus of circulation into that left hip. So that would mean that I'm going to continue to try to go a little farther downwards. Okay, and you might even decide to cross the arms and let your forehead rest onto the hands. But if you're doing this and all you're doing is gritting your teeth and it's just too much, you might find that it's better for some people to have their blocks and to push up this way. So this is a little less hip intense for me, but it's nice for my spine. So just be in the moment and decide how you're going to organize your shape. You know, all we do in practice is sort of to reorganize the spaces we breathe into, right? That's the continuous experience, right? Reorganizing the spaces, right? The front space, the side space, the back space. Remember the space topic for the pathways. Okay, I like to take the transition when my hips are this direction. It's a little easier for my spine. So if you're low, like let's say you're farther forward, you want to come up, of course, and then bring the weight into your left sitting bone and the sitting bone itself, and then right leg swings forward. If you're without the bolster, you do the same kind of operation, though the bolster's kind of cushiony. And then the right leg goes downward, so it's straight forward from the hip, right? It's not that my knee's like out here, it's straight forward. And then I let the left leg stretch back. Okay, so kind of notice, okay, leg, stay. Now, once I lean the left thigh down, for some of us without the bolster, right, this knee's gonna probably go farther out. And there is a teaching where the goal is to get your foot forward, but that's like you're going into the splits or something. That's really the aim. So unless that's your goal is to get into the splits, then we're staying with focus on hip density here, okay? So elbows can go lower down to the blanket. You decide, right? I kind of like the blocks. I can go a little lower on them than I did a moment ago for a bit and then come up. So there's a myriad of possibilities for many of these poses, huh? So feel when you're leaning in, feel where the body weight is into the hip. Balance the spine's arch. The feeling where the ribs move. Right, you're in a forward fold, so it's a different breath experience, right? It's quite different, and it's easier for the lungs for it to be prone, but it's also easy to get passive and kind of sleepy on the breath focus. And if you're low on the elbows, see if you can bring the hands down. If this hurts your wrist, right, you can always use the hand position in more of a fist. So it's more muscular than joint pressure. I know some people don't want to do that because they feel like it's like they're a failure at it, but I'm starting to feel like this sometimes just feels better in my shoulder. This just doesn't seem like an intelligent choice all the time, is to push my palm this way. So just changing it up might be helpful. Okay, unless this hurts, right, with the fist. And now feel how you might be gripping one part of the body and other parts just are naturally tightening up. So I want you to lean down to that right hip, actively lean, and then let the left leg swing forward. And we're going to use the wall in a different way now. So take the blocks aside and let's shift. And if you need to do a little bit of a leg kind of shake down, this might be nice to be up on a bolster so you're not going to hurt the knees. And do a little bit of tapotment, which is tapping. Okay, so you can feel a little bit of movement there. Okay, so let's turn to the wall and have your bolster right there at the wall space. Okay, or near it. Mine isn't quite there. Grasp onto your blankets, and both of them are, I think, kind of required for this. So I like to make it so they're about a quarter fold stacked up. If you're going to call it something else, let me know at the end of the session so I can change my instruction. I don't mind learning other things too to help us out with the instructional language. Okay, now the distance from the wall depends on your height. So if you're tall, don't get close to the wall here. If you're short, it might work out better. So I'm going to hold on to the bolster and pull it in. I'm going to sit up on my blankets, bend the left knee. You'll figure out how close you need to be now. Just kind of test this out, and you might get back off the blanket and moving forward. But your left knee bends so that foot is towards the right groins. Ball is under the left knee. And then you want the bolster to kind of push gently, nudge the wall at the base, and then be able to lean into it. Now, if you go, oh, it's too far, about ready to fall into it, then you might pull the blankets a little closer. Don't get too close and don't get too far. So the wall is a great prop for this. So my right foot is stretching out. It's not actively flexing that much, but it's out to that right side. The sand can go on the left side and up high. And then I'll move my bolster so it's tipped up. The short end is against the base of the wall. And I'm going to lift it up and lean forward towards the wall. Okay, so that right foot might turn in, it might try to roll out. So your work is on flexing through that right heel. So the toes are where the foot stretches straight up as much as possible. And lean forward and let your head center between the arms and breathe. And maybe let your head nod a little side to side. Feel if this is okay for your shoulders. Just notice if it is okay. That's pretty exciting because you can mobilize your neck without as much neck tension. So I find if let's say I'm leaning forward with my hands on the bolster low, my neck tension's a little bit more, right? If I have my arms reaching, it's interesting how this changes the circulation kind of standard in your upper back. So again, we're just kind of playing with it in some ways. Okay, now when you lean forward, Again, if you need to move back, farther back from the wall or closer, take this time to figure it out. Ribs expand on the inhale. And center on the exhale. Exhaling, letting go. Okay, now lower the bolster, drop it, and turn left with the right hand to the left knee and rotate. Feel where that right leg, it's like I want something to push my right foot into, so I don't let the toes pivot in. But the best you have is to encourage that waist turn in the mobile part of your vertebrae. So if you were to focus and on the vertebrae, even if all you need to do is work with anatomy study, is that you can feel how these circulation in the thoracic is really quite mobile for turning. So let yourself sit well so the lumbar spine is stable, and feel your rotation here. Let your eyes maybe close. Breathing. Okay, now I want you to let that right hand go a little higher on the left thigh, maybe up to the sandbag. And your focus is getting the ribs to center up. We don't imagine they're going to get that much higher than this because they're in the body, right? But what we're focusing now on is leaning to the right leg, right arm on the leg or on a block. So I prefer a block besides my right leg. Otherwise, I can't quite be relaxed with it. But you could also use the bolster. Right? So what you might do is put a block right besides the right leg, so it's at the second setting. Then the bolster can go on top of that, and then you can lean into it. You know what might happen is the bolster's going to kick up, but the head relaxes into the hand, the left arm can stretch over. So it's a good way to do this shape, not side sage, but side reach. Okay, so this is called Janu Shirshasana. I'm just trying to remember what our Sanskrit is for this one. Yeah, that's one of my favorite shapes. Just to be cautious though, right? You want to have a little lift of your hips so you're on a blanket stack. You can do these without blankets, but it's a little harsh on the spine. So if the arm is tired for about right now, it starts to get fatigued, I just let the left arm go behind and feel that energy starting to move, not just in my waist, but around the back into the kidneys. Okay, let the body weight lean into that right seat. Breathing. Okay, now coming up, release the hold, come on up. Okay, let's go kind of back to the very first shape. We move the bolster up, we shift. So the right knee bends, the left leg reaches out. I switch the ball over to you can put your bolster down, I suppose, for this. I'm just multitasking. So the ball is under that right knee, and then the sand goes over to the right thigh. Okay, and lean forward. Yeah, you might kind of do a little bit of movement of the ribs, kind of jostling the ribs, shrugging the shoulders, rolling them back, leaning forwards. Yeah, the right foot could be far from the left leg. It could be closer. But, when you close it in, it could feel better on the knee. It could feel worse on the knee. So maybe it doesn't feel any different. But noticing if you have a little bit more openness at that right side of the knee. Leaning, strengthening. And maybe let the weight of your head lean forward. Nice work for the spine. Yeah, just that circulation with the arms reaching, that strength into the upper back. Okay, so this puts a load into the back muscles because you're pushing. So just kind of notice it's not just a passive position, even though there could be some passive components of the structure, right? Your legs might feel somewhat passive, some parts of them. Okay, now when you lower down the bolster, you're going to turn right, left hand to the right knee. This seems to work out for me to touch onto my knee, but some find that they want to go higher on the leg part, right, a little bit above the knee to feel the circulation in the waist. Some like to use a block behind them for this one, right? You can feel how the ribs have a little different expression when your hand is on a little bit of height. Yeah, and maybe one side feels like it needs that more than the other, because if I put my hand down, I can't quite get the rib circulation to be buoyant. My left foot maybe gets too excited about it, so let it relax. Breathing. You know, if you haven't kind of figured what this is about how this connects to the next pose, the reason I take it into the turn, so give it a few more moments, is so that we find that kind of spiral line along the spine. You know, the axis of the spine has some sense of turning and lifting. Okay, so now when I take the left arm now over to the left leg, right, and stretch up, I have this little bit of inner lift. So this one might be where you need some props, right? You need a block besides the left leg. Maybe you don't really care for this whole prop setup, but you could go without it. You could use a belt under your foot and pull. But this one's nice to have something. I don't feel like you have to use the bolster with the block. But you can tell how it's about getting this lift in this mid body. It's not about how far you get over your leg or if you hold your big toe, but it's this inner lift. There's plenty of pose instructions holding the toe, but then the whole mid body kind of squeezes up. And about this time, you know, as you're aging, you really don't want that shortness to conspire against you. So try to get the inner lift and bring your head towards your hand if you're using this method, or if you're reaching, that's fine. Right arm can go over. Yeah, I like to play with this block support here. Yeah, so it should be a little bit of a exploration. Yeah, especially when you're in your home practice. But you're not necessarily in a classroom looking around and comparing. You're working in your own exploration here. Okay, so feel that reach. And maybe the shoulder doesn't like to go back. Maybe something with the hand behind you helps. Breathe. Okay, I hope you feel the waist has a stretch on this one. Let go of your reach with your head to the left. Come up carefully, lifting. Keep lifting up through the spine. All right. Okay, now we're going to take the bolster down next to the wall, across, horizontal. Take away the sand for the moment. Keep your ball and your blocks nearby. Okay, now we're going to uncross through the legs. Take the feet wide as your mat for a moment, and just lift up through the heart and reach the heart forward. Hands can slide down to the feet, and just let the back have a nice little counter pose. Yeah, that could mean that your abdominal muscles get a little passive here for a moment, but you can feel the back muscles stretch. Breathing. Your head can lean down. Yeah, give your back a counter pose here. So shifting, like I mentioned, a little side to side is nice. Okay, head center, and then slide the hands up to the knees, and let's bring the feet close, and we're going to use the hands to push off the blankets and slide one blanket away. Let's actually put it maybe near your wall space for later. Okay, at the spinal now. So the blanket underneath your head, I would encourage you to flatten that down to a single fold. And then when your feet lift up on the bolster, you're going to shift your hips to it and then head back onto the blanket. Yeah, this blanket kind of feels a little low for me right now, but I know it's better for me not to do too much neck rounding, so I'll try to adapt. Okay, so feet onto the bolster. Take a ball, and actually you might need to bring your knees to your chest to put the ball between. So ball between the knees, and then when your feet touch onto the bolster, feel if you can kind of push the hips back a little bit so you can then lengthen your spine. Right? You need to give yourself a bit of a hug and try to stretch out the upper back so you can feel the vertebral column. Okay. All right. So feet relax, even though they're pushing a little bit into the bolster. Don't get too pushy yet. Squeeze the ball and relax that squeeze. So alternate squeezing and relaxing. So the focus is on the anatomy of leg parts, but actually it's a little bit closer to pelvic floor soon. Okay, now next time you relax the grip with the ball, it stays between still, but you're going to push down into your feet and lift the hips up. I'm too far away from the wall. So you can tell if you can't get traction, like doesn't need to be Velcro to the mat, but you need to be able to feel like you can lift up and feel that space right behind the a little bit below the heart, that you can feel that press into the ground, and then right behind the heart does find its definition. Arms overhead. Breathe and lower down the parts of the spine you get to touch to the floor. Yeah, and let's do this a few times, alternating about 4 more times. But feel how you can monitor that movement through your back. And be really caring, right? It's again, your home practice. This is great. You can explore, you can go slower, you can go at your very own meticulous pace to feel what touches down. Because you're not going to feel what doesn't touch down, are you? Okay. Let the whole base of the back feel the touch down and release. Inhale, breathing full, belly full. Exhale, lift. I'm going micro slow now. Okay, now the last lift you have, see if you can successfully get a feeling of the hips lifting. Okay, and then lower the spine down. Okay, let's try this. Okay, take the knees in. It's not that I see somebody doing anything wrong, but I want you to have a belt. I don't think we use this, but let's go with it. Okay, this is maybe more my sensation of where I feel this in my back, but you're going to take the belt, unbuckle to the shins, and when you bring your feet onto the bolster, when your belt is centered, it doesn't have to be at your ankles or your knees. It's right in the middle, and that's plenty. But you're going to lift your hips up, and now feel how high you get up onto your back this way. Okay, it's a little more definition in the shoulders. Try to pull with you really want to pull the belt, so you have to lift your hips. The reason we're doing this is to get your hips higher. Lift up your hips. If you have something to pull against, your upper back actually helps you get this. So lift the hips. Okay, and then pull. Yeah, hopefully it doesn't feel anything in the knee. If it does, you're too close to the wall. So you gotta be careful. This is just a nice assignment for the spine. Okay, let's just do one more. We'll pass on blocks for the bridge pose. We'll do this one more time. Feet are wide apart. You gotta make sure their stance is wide. Pull. There's resistance going all directions right now. If your heels are sliding in, push down to your feet, lift the hips. Okay, now, good job. Trying that. Lower down the spine. Okay, bring your knees in towards your chest. Take your belt under both of your feet. Lift them up. Whew, stretching up through the feet, and then push the feet out wide on the belt. Now release that lower back. Let the legs rock a little side to side. Anything that's like connecting the leg into the waist, we're gonna stretch in our finale here, so it should work out nicely. Bend the knees just enough to slide the feet back together. Bring your knees to your chest, slide the belt off for good. And then let's push our bolster to the right side of our mat. And yeah, be careful of how your knees tweaks on that one. Just push it over and then help out with your hands. And you will take the left leg and cross it over to your bolster. Use a ball to the sacrum area so it's low, it kind of nudges in. And then add your sand. Now this is where you might want to place the blanket under your head a little higher. So I just find an easy way to adapt that, once I get my sand somehow figured out, is I hold the round corner near my neck and then fold it up again. Now this one I find I need a little more C7 support, right? And since the cervical is so mobile, it's either really mobile or something happens and it is not anymore. So you're either in one category or the next. So if you're pretty mobile, just be careful. Don't overdo it with the neck. Okay, let your left arm open. Your right hand could rest onto that sand. It could rest on your torso. So you feel how good of a twister you are. And or let the hand relax where it may. But the sand is an option on the side of that left thigh. And the right knee can stay with a firm bend, or if that hurts your knee, you could slide a little farther away from the wall. Okay, but feeling where there's bending and circulation, and with a slow, deep breath. Exhale completely. Now bring the hands to the sand and pull that to the belly. Be sure to move the ball and then shift the knees back in center, pointing up, and then moving the bolster to the other side. When you take the crossover, I know sometimes having that sand suddenly there can be a bit of a breath taker. So you might get right into that twist on the second side and feel how nice twist can be for your breathing muscles, especially by the end of class. You kind of notice, oh, this twisting is kind of refreshing for my breath. It's not a usual daily habit. You know, sometimes if you're doing some outside work, you are getting quite a bit of twisting motions, but in general, not a normal habit of movement in our rib cage. You know, not every moment of the day, maybe depends on what you're up to. But let your head roll to the right. Feel the chest movement with the breath, but not too much, right? We don't want too much breath in the higher part, in the upper lungs. We want it to flow into lower lobes, right? To that lower base in the intercostals, between the ribs. Your arms could stay with that right reach, open the armpit. Your head could roll right, you decide. Now, when you start to shift your arms back towards that sand, if you're using that, slide it towards the wall and remove the ball, roll left, come up, and then the bolster is right at the base of the wall. And you'll slide your blanket towards it. And then when you sit on the bolster, if it's kind of awkward to get on the bolster and then try to swing your legs up, you can always use like a stack of blankets instead. Some people find that have been doing this for decades will find that that's just the way that their body aligns with it. So if that's the case for you, this, you could have the 2 blankets and then it might be easier to sit on them and to roll the or swing the legs up. The bolster is pretty big. It's a big height for us to, it's demanding. So you want to get on the side of the bolster and then roll the shoulder under. So I tend to, of course, in this session, right, because I'm kind of like to pivot to the screen that way and not go through this door. So I roll that direction. But you might find it's wise to change sides, okay? That you get into one habit, I know, but once you're upside down, it's not, you're on both sides. Huh? So yeah, sometimes you land just right for this one. So supporting the neck and using that sandbag, particularly, so it's underneath, well, it's not underneath, it's on top of the feet for this direction. But when I lift up, sometimes finding how this helps the knees can be really nice because it's this reverse pressure on the knees than you experience during the day with the feet below you. So it's a really good healthy one, but be careful that the knees, you're not trying to push all the way through. They feel like they're reaching, but don't make it so uncomfortable in the knee joint that you're pushing through, hyperextending. So find a realistic support. If you want a blanket on your torso, it could be soothing, even if you're warm enough where you're at. It might be nice to have that included benefit. Arms resting outwards, palms releasing, and let your eyes close. If you have an eye pillow, place that over them. And feeling that reverse effect of gravity back towards the heart. Taking a self-study of the movement of the breathing, the primary breathing muscle, the diaphragm. You might feel when the inhalation occurs that the abdominal area moves. And as you exhale, as it falls towards the base of the body or the back of the body, there could be an energy of a little bit of grip at the base of the heart, right where the diaphragm flows back. Has this kind of perfect swimming relationship in the body with its motion. So taking a moment to kind of have appreciation, breathing appreciation moments for your body to cooperate with that alternating breath and center. Breathe and center. Let your head nod from side to side. Now with the knees in a micro bend, and then just shift the feet slightly away from the wall and noticing that circulation maybe in your torso, maybe in your back. It's probably different for everyone, right? How Moving your feet away puts that weight, reverses that flow of lymph. That's the least of your feeling though, isn't it? And use this to help the back, right? So that leg lift stretches the back. And then as you bend through the knees, and you maybe toss the sand overhead, or you carefully shift it to the side. Hold the backs of the legs, not the knees, so you're careful with knee flexion. This is really good for massaging the digestive tract. If you have a blanket in the torso, it can be a bit intense, stretching into that zone. And then let your arms support your transition to sitting. So when you maybe rock a little side to side, it's such a little bit of time to add on here. So roll to the side and feel when the knees bend, feel where once you kind of lose your balance in rolling, you got to let your head turn and use the hands to bring you up. Yeah, it's kind of fun to figure out how to roll to get up. Be a little toddler. Toddler time, not tummy time, but toddler time. And then hands to the lap, you're sitting on the bolster on top, and with the head lifting a little bit, just a tiny lift of the circulation in the neck so that you're supported by the wall. And feeling that concentration inside, acknowledging your efforts to be in this practice today. And bring your hands in front of the heart, inhaling together. And exhale, bowing into